breakdown or some of your takeaways that you saw from the very small sample size of CJ Stroud in his preseason debut, Kian.
Yeah, a lot. So again, kind of, I would say a mixed bag, but I do think the general consensus was, I would say, a pro from CJ Stroud. I think he's a guy who went into preseason, showed a lot of what he did at Ohio State. Obviously, prototypical size quarterback, really good arm, accurate. And I think with a lot of people, where you had the Bryce Young, the CJ Stroud, and where a lot of people took CJ Stroud over, was that accuracy as a quarterback. And I
Yeah.
think that was reflected in preseason. Again, a guy who, you look at the Texans' past successful quarterback, Deshaun Watson, I think you can see a lot of similarities between the two guys, similar height, I'd say similar arm talent. So again, I think a pretty pro, I would say positive from CJ Stroud. The one thing for me is just, it's weird because I feel like this year for quarterbacks, at least, the sample sizes the past 2 years
Yeah.
have been bigger. I feel
Yeah.
like we've seen quarterbacks play more. So again, that's just one of the other things. But I will say, I think preseason overhypes or quarterbacks. I do think it is
Yeah.
definitely a kind of, I don't, it's a good tell. Like, obviously, if the quarterback's throwing 5 picks, that's
Right.
there. But I do think,
Yeah.
yeah, I do think it's not a be all. So I think, but again,
Yeah.
CJ Stroud, obviously you always want to be a pro there, but I do think started off strong.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I don't know if I'll agree with starting off strong with CJ Stroud, but I will agree with the fact that you talk about preseason, and it's really not a whole lot to be taken away from it. I've listened to multiple shows, multiple podcasts, as we had the preseason late last week, going in through the weekend, and we saw the rookies unfolding, and probably a million times they're like, but it is the preseason, this
Mm.
is the preseason here, and it's like Michael Darby comments and says Saints are winning the Super Bowl. I'd love to feel that way after what Derek Carr did, throwing the touchdown pass to Kirkwood, seeing
Yeah.
Kamara in the preseason. But the time to actually get it together to get the roster spot is preseason. And again, if they're throwing 5 picks, that's the place to do it. That's okay. I'm not a big guy on training camp, not a big guy on pro days, but when we finally do get in the pads, we finally do get the first looks of, just for me, really the preseason, the rookie QBs rather, that's what I really like to dig into. First couple dropbacks from CJ Stroud were okay. The thing for me is he seemed very stiff, like the legs were very minimal. And I know he wasn't a guy that really moved around a whole lot and manipulated the pocket. And maybe I'm spoiled a little bit off what he did to my dogs, in the game before the national championship. I think that game for him, and like many people have said, really elevated CJ Stroud to that number 2 pick and really put him on a lot of people's boards, being that Ohio State quarterback coming out. We know the Ohio State QBs, of course, don't get a lot of recognition, especially coming into the NFL. He did deliver a nice simple throw in one of his early dropbacks, took a horrible sack, which I didn't like. And then you see his third drop back where I think he actually does use a little bit of play action. I don't really remember, but he did escape the pocket, scrambled a little bit, had a chance to climb in the pocket too before he threw that really awful interception. And you could tell that he didn't handle pressure super well. Now, of course, you saw he was under a good bit of pressure, which you didn't like to see. But his last drop back was probably the cleanest pocket he had all night. Drop back was good. Not sure if his receivers were covered downfield, but he held the ball for a minute, of course, before scrambling. Ends the night with 2 for 4 on passing, 13 yards, an interception, and sacks. He only went from under center twice. Both of those were actually complete passes. He wasn't pressured on those. Looked pretty decent on the play action. But my one big takeaway, and it's kind of the same with Bryce Young, as we're going to get into him a little later down the line, is it was very simple for the first and second overall picks in the NFL preseason week one. A lot of one-step drops, a lot of one reads, maybe a little bit of play action. I don't even think Bryce Young got a chance to roll out and kind of manipulate the pocket like we know he's